Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I intend to go directly to the meat of the issue. Perhaps as a vegetarian, I shouldn't use that analogy. But to the heart of the conversation in this honorable place. First, to address some of what we were forced to endure by way of a budget reply yesterday. And then to be able to reflect on some of the measures in the Honorable Prime Minister's budgetary proposals and financial statement. Sir, there has been much discussion about the question of debt. And while others have addressed it in various ways, I think it is extremely important because debt and the way we manage it will continue to be a part of our economic management program in this country. And there were certain representations made in this honorable place yesterday by the Leader of the Opposition that suggests to me that he perhaps was somewhere else while this country and all Barbadians were holding on, hanging on at the precipice for dear life for a decade. And it is something that I do not take lightly. And when the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central spoke yesterday, perhaps what you perceived in his reaction, the passion and the outrage in some regard, comes from the fact that it has been no easy task to repair the damage that was done by a Democratic Labour Party administration. And people like the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central and I often feel as if we were sitting in our various places, almost minding our own business. But embarrassed to be Barbadian economists in an economy that was being flushed completely down the toilet while we watched. And that is perhaps the reason that you see us in this honorable place today. Not, unlike the member for Christchurch South, driven by any aspirations for high office, but driven only by the desperate situation in which we found our country. And so we heard yesterday, sir, that debt reprofiling that the Democratic Labour Party and the then Minister of Finance wanted to do is gentle. Debt reprofiling is gentle, and the suggestion was that what we had to do to rescue the economy by way of debt restructuring is not gentle. But you know what else is gentle, sir? Gentleness is often used as an excuse for the impotent. Impotence is full of gentle, flaccid, good intent that can neither meet the circumstances of the moment nor rise to the occasion. That is some of what we heard in here yesterday. And that was regrettably the approach and the orientation of the former Minister of Finance for the Democratic Labour Party in his approach to debt reprofiling. This is a man and an administration that created $18.1 billion in debt and then came to the people of Barbados and said, this is what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to reprofile the debt gently. Gently, sir. And I'm going to save $70 million. The grand plan that the former Minister of Finance had to save the country from $18.1 billion in debt was to gently reprofile it to the tune of $70 million out of an $18.1 billion debt. Yes, reprofiling is gentle and impotent and flaccid. And that was all that the then Democratic Labour Party could bring to address the debt overhang and the crisis that existed at the time. And then we keep hearing about this notion that the debt restructuring destroyed the sustainability of the national insurance scheme. You know, there are those who start fires, watch the fire catch, and then run outside and start screaming, "There's a fire." And that is exactly what this represents. Because the only reason that the national insurance scheme was hit so hard by a debt restructuring was that it was overexposed to government borrowing in the first place, against the warning of those from the investment committee who said to the then government, "This is too much borrowing, this is too far, this is going to threaten our sustainability." And having ignored that warning, then we are being told that the debt restructuring that we had to do destroyed the sustainability of the NIS, which is also false. So the debt restructuring cost $805 million to the NIS because of its overexposure. Now, and we've heard before as we went through the process of putting forward proposals for how we keep the NIS sustainable, National Insurance Fund, if that 0.8 billion or so had been saved, it would have grown to about 1.9 billion. But even that 1.9 billion could only have saved the National Insurance Fund 3 years in terms of sustainability. So the straw man that is being set up is really to suggest that this Barbados Labour Party administration and our economic management team caused harm, when really the harm was caused by people who did not understand that you cannot keep borrowing over and over again from your domestic institutions like the National Insurance Scheme and the central bank without putting them under threat. And then when we had to come and take a bold decision to restructure domestic and external debt, it is suggested that that was too far. But I want to go a little bit further on that matter. We were told similarly in this chamber yesterday that the letter regarding the decision to restructure the debt and the engagement of the parties who supported us in that endeavor was signed 5 days after the Prime Minister was sworn in. And yes, it is true that the debt restructuring was announced on the 1st of June 2018, but I want the Honourable Leader of the Opposition to then count the days before the payment was due in that same month that would have wiped out by half the little bit of reserves that the Democratic Labour Party had left. The reserves stood at $220 million, or about 5 weeks. The payment that was due to on that Credit Suisse loan by the end of that month would have cut that out by half. That would have put us at 2 weeks of reserves. But some people just go on vacation for more than that, sir. Not anybody in here. But I'm going to go further with this Credit Suisse loan, sir. Because there is something called a collective action clause that is sometimes enacted in debt instruments. And all that means is that in the event of a debt restructuring, a collective action clause means that only 75% of the creditors have to agree to a way forward, and that will bind the other creditors to an agreement on what they will accept in the restructuring. I want to say something about the Credit Suisse facility that was agreed by the government of Barbados in late 2013. It was for the amount of US 150 million. So when they done rinse out the NIS and they done rinse out the central bank, it was for US 150 million. With a 5-year maturity, sir, well, by the time you blink, it's time to pay that back, so I don't know who negotiate that. A 5-year maturity, it was increased to 225 million in 2014, and the maturity was extended by 1 year to 2019. The interest payable on it was linked to Barbados's credit rating. And it had therefore increased significantly over the years, with numerous downgrades, to 12% and climbing at the end of 2017. That was the loan that would have come due in a significant payment by the end of June, and that was the way that it was negotiated. But sir, the irony of it is that the same people that we were supposed to not have paid for their work to restructure the debt were the same ones that managed to achieve the following. Remember, the Credit Suisse loan did not have in those collective action clauses that would have meant that once you get 75% of the creditors to agree, everybody has to agree. The Credit Suisse loan didn't have that. It was not negotiated with that. So it meant that everybody involved had to agree to the terms. Sir, I am quoting from an IMF report of 2020 that makes an assessment of Barbados's debt restructuring, and I encourage everybody to read it. It says in November 2013 press release, the government announced overwhelming creditor support for the debt exchange, with participation well above the 75% threshold for the 3 outstanding Euro bonds. But I want to make this point about the people that were maligned in here for doing the work to bring about one of the most successful debt restructurings in debt history. Not in the Caribbean, not in the Western Hemisphere, but in the world, independently assessed to be so. The participation rate in the Credit Suisse facility, these people did not have to agree because it had no collective action clause. They could have held out, sir, for the next 40 years. The participation rate in the Credit Suisse facility, based on negotiation of the team that was representing Barbados, came in at 100%. On December 11, 2019, the transaction closed with full creditor participation. Sir, on the same day and in response to the completion of the debt exchange, Standard & Poor's upgraded Barbados's foreign currency sovereign credit rating from selective default to B negative. And these are the people, nobody thought it could be done. These are the people that you come in here and malign and suggest that they took advantage of a government. It is not they who took advantage of a government or the people of Barbados. It was a Democratic Labour Party administration in this country. But sir, there's something else that I want to get to. And it is the notion represented in here yesterday that we've had no capital expenditure. I really believe sometimes in just getting yourself ready for battle, because you are facing a Barbados Labour Party administration that has done the work and that has the receipts. And you come in here ill-informed, having just woken up, not ready to have a real conversation. So let us have a real conversation, sir. In 10 years of capital expenditure by a Democratic Labour Party government, and when we talk about capital expenditure, what we're trying to say is this: how do we spend the money, expend the resources to be able to make sure that people are employed, to make sure that we create the infrastructure to build confidence and get people to invest and make sure that business works, things like roads and mobile networks and so on. Houses, schools, the things that Barbadians determine are important in the way of capital works to their lives and to the expansion of their choices. And that is why capital expenditure is important to an economy. In 10 years of a Democratic Labour Party government, they were able to achieve, the highest capital expenditure they were able to achieve was 2.6. Actually, their highest capital expenditure, interestingly, came on the heels of a Barbados Labour Party government. 2.6 in 2008-9, which means they were picking up some of the projects that a Barbados Labour Party government had started, and that was the highest number. You see, sir, the peak at the beginning, that's a bad sign. That is a bad sign, as most in here would appreciate. You need to finish strong, sir.
I remember, be careful with your analogies. Just be careful.
I feel I'm still on the right side, sir, but I'll take your guidance.
I remember, I fully understand you.
So they only managed to, they got that high on the back of our CapEx program coming out of 2007. They got to 2.6. This is as a percent of GDP, sir. Now, sir, the highest that this Barbados Labour Party government was able to achieve over the last 6 years is a high of 4.1% of GDP over the last 6 years. In fact, our highest expenditure came in circumstances where the country was at a standstill. The country was shutting down. It was during COVID. We saw that we had $425 million in CapEx in 21-22 and $476 million in 22-23. So and furthermore, they never even managed to reach the expenditure that we saw in the height of COVID. This is a Democratic Labour Party administration that had 10 years to get themselves together. But sir, the final point I want to make on this is this. Over the last 6 years, the CapEx for this administration has reached $1,835 million over 6 years. Over 10 years, with 4 more years, they didn't even manage to get that high. Coming in only at $1,800 million. And they had 10 years to do it. So even not having gotten to the 10-year mark, we are still far, far ahead. And that is why I don't understand how a leader of the opposition can leave aside where he would have had a record of which, not to boast, but with which to demonstrate sound leadership and good management. But instead, he chooses to associate himself with the worst results, arguably, that this country has ever seen by any economic team or any government since independence. Why we choose to associate in that way? Sir, I want to turn to the budgetary proposals and the financial statement that we heard from the Honourable Member for St. Michael North East, the Honourable Prime Minister, on Monday. And you know what strikes me, sir, is this is not an ordinary budget. I don't know how many people realize that. This, having gone through BERT 1, Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Plan, the first iteration, where we were focused on stabilization. Now that we are at BERT 2, this is the platform for growth. But, sir, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition talked about wanting to remove elitist structures. I don't know how a man could want to remove elitist structures and holding on so desperately to King's Counsel after his name. Don't want to get rid of KC at all. In this new republic that he's so proud of. These things jump me every time I look at the TV. That's how we want to associate, and you're talking about removing elitist structures? But sir, if there has ever been any example of a rebalancing and redistribution of resources and opportunity in a budget, it is in this budget. And I'll tell you what I mean. These budgetary proposals have managed in regularizing these legacy concessional arrangements that we heard the Honorable Prime Minister talk about, where people are coming with typeset agreements and saying, I am still entitled to concessions, not having proven how many jobs you've brought or continue to bring, not having proven how much foreign exchange, not having proven how you're upgrading the plant, or making sure that workers' rights are protected. But you believe that you can hold on to concessions for 30 and 40 years, and we're saying no. It is not an anti-investment posture at all. It is a pro-investment posture that seeks to make sure that government is investing its tax expenditure where it matters and where it helps people. And so we require those people to reapply and to be reassessed while we do what, sir? While we bring that concessionary space to the groups and sectors that most need it and that can least afford to go without it. And so we see, sir, that we have, for example, not legacy concessions to large, big, in some cases, foreign business, but 25% tax credit to boost the 50% research and development tax that already exists, research and development tax credit that already exists for oceans and greening the economy. 50% tax credit on centers that are offering artificial intelligence, coding, robotics, and digital training. 50% tax credit for laboratories. And then there's a range of tax credits and other concessions that relate to the community of people living with disabilities, that relate to centers that offer care. This is what a redistributive budget that is focused not on consolidating wealth into the hands of those who already have, but on making sure that those who we must involve in the growth path are set up to thrive and prosper. I dare say, sir, I have worked throughout the region, throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. Some say that there's one of our characters in Barbadian lore that says famously, I have been all over the world and other places too. And I feel as if I've had enough exposure to economic policy to know that this is an unusual thing. A government that seeks out, that tries to find all of the ways in which people may be missing the best of the opportunity, and then writes that into its financial proposals. We say in public finance that you can tell a country's priorities by its budget. And look at the priorities that have been outlined. Care, people with disabilities, the innovation sector, young people, small business. This is the platform for growth here, sir. And I want to say that the Ministry of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology is perhaps, not to boast, but perhaps one of the sectors that is most poised to be able to deliver that. We determined, sir, that one of the only ways that we are going to get out of inflationary cycles get out of the trap where you are moving wages, but then prices follow. That's what happens, you know. You try to move wages along to try and match inflation, but guess what? Wages are a price. The other prices are going to follow. So how do we seek to index wages then to growth and productivity? Which is one of the things we have to figure out. But the way to settle this once and for all, really, is to increase wages organically. To be able to say, actually, we're creating high-income sectors. Everybody who works in these sectors will be making more money because of the nature of the sector. The data and technology sector has to be that sector. So that we're not just buying software and putting in immigration or putting in the Office of the Attorney General, so that we are creating an ecosystem of startups and scale-ups and other local and regional companies that are building for us, that are solving local problems, and then saying to the rest of the world, look, we solved this problem for Barbados, we solved this problem for Jamaica, we're going to come and solve it for you. That is the industry that we have to create. The reason the data center is going to be built is that that data center is going to power that industry. Now, we have some work to do, and I very much appreciate the posture of the Honorable Minister in the other place, the Minister for Health and Wellness, when he came to this place and he said, I am not happy with everything at Queen Elizabeth Hospital. I am not happy with everything in the Ministry of Health and Wellness. The Honorable Member for St. Michael North East, the Honorable Prime Minister, had a similar approach when she said, look, I'm going to call it as I see it. What do we have to clean up? What do we have to do better? What do we have to fix? MIST is in a similar place, where we have to say simply, look, we have created GovTech, brand new agency that is going to be responsible for the execution of online services to all people. And then the ministry will be responsible for policy, regulation, the directorate to say what are the policy orientations that we take while that agency is delivering to various ministries, departments, and agencies.
Your Honourable Member has 2 more minutes.
So, sir, one of the things that we have to realize, though, is that there is a lot of work to be done. And this is the kind of area where we have to bring everybody along. One of my very talented officers, he's not my officer, but he's one of the officers of the ministry, my team members, I like to feel like we're a team, was discussing with me yesterday the need for public key infrastructure. What is that? That is the entire building out of a digital trust service framework. That means what? The only way that we can really move fully to an online environment for all documents is to have digital signatures and certificates. Right now, people sign things, use a seal, all kinds of fancy ways to use paper. The only way that we're going to move away from that is to bring in this infrastructure, and it calls for all of us to be there. So whether it is the Trident ID, the cybersecurity, the cybercrime legislation, which we need to keep people safe, the Electronic Transactions Act, which we have to revisit, the Data Protection Act of 2019, which we have to perhaps build out, this is going to be an ongoing conversation in this country. But I want Barbadians to understand that just like with a hurricane, just like with the climate crisis, the action is not to do nothing. If we do nothing, we are going to be caught unawares and we are going to be at risk to the worst elements out there. I'm asking Barbadians to come along with the Ministry of Industry, Innovation, Science and Technology, to come along with the government of Barbados, to have the important conversations about what is the balance of data privacy and protection along with the need for services and the enjoyment of all of our choices in this new and growing Barbados. Barbados is a buzz, sir. It is a buzz. It is not just a buzz with economic activity, but with the conversations on transformation that are going to allow us to take full advantage of that economic activity with all Barbadians involved. I dare us to dream, not to hope, but to dream and to execute together. Sir, I'm obliged to you.